Okay, so it is 11 o'clock. So why don't we get started? I will give the two of you just like brief introductions, and then the floor is all yours. So Nicholas, sorry, am I gonna pronounce this correctly? Panico,
Yes, that's correct.
okay, is a recent medical school graduate from Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine. He received his bachelor's in biology from John Carroll University, and he is now the senior director of NERV. Nikki Barrington is an MD PhD student at Rosalind Franklin University of Medicine and Science. She received her BS from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and her MPH from the University of California, Davis. She is co-founder and director of operations for the National Association of Interprofessional Health, Mentorship, Education, and Service. So thank you guys for taking the time to talk to us today, and the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, and can everybody see my screen? Just want to make sure before I get started.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that great introduction. I don't think any further introduction is required. So Nick and I are here on behalf of NERV, which is the Neurosurgery Education and Research Virtual Experience Group. I know many of you are very familiar with Dr. D'Amico, and he has been one of the greatest supporters of NERV. So we want to make sure that, particularly for you, those of you that are pre-med or about to enter med school or may already be in med school, that you know about NERV and all of the great things that we've been up to for the last few years. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So NERV is a national virtual interest group that is supported by our parent organization, Brain and Spine Group, which is a nonprofit organization. And NERV is designed to supplement your med school education and provide a forum for shared objective mentorship. We specifically focus on disadvantaged students, which we have a broad definition of what disadvantaged means, that are interested in neurosurgery, neurology, neuroscience, or psychiatry. So we really try to recruit students that don't have a home residency program in neurosurgery or in the field that they're interested in, or don't have a national organization chapter in their specialty of interest. So for example, a AANS, which is neurosurgery chapter, or a AAN, which is neurology chapter at their home institution. We also try to recruit students that are underrepresented in medicine in general and or their specialty of choice. First generation medical students or first generation college students, and students that are in their first through third years of medical school or taking research fellowship years or doing a PhD or MPH additional degree. So really, we cover every stage of medical education that someone might be in. Our goal is to work on 5 different competency areas. So research skills and scholarly activities. So really helping people learn how to conduct research, particularly clinical research, and engage in the process from beginning to end of, having a hypothesis and creating a research project and seeing that all the way through to the end of submitting an abstract to a conference, getting that paper published, et cetera. We also focus on clinical knowledge, professional development, technological literacy and resource management, and technical skills. We'll talk a little bit more about how we sort of cover all those things throughout the year in a little bit. We are very excited this year to have a very diverse cohort. You can see there at the bottom that over the previous 4 years, we're entering our 5th year here that NERV has been around. We have increased greatly the number of student members and the number of institutions represented. We just recently recruited our cohort for the upcoming academic year and are very excited to welcome almost 40 new members and several returning members. And we're very excited that we now represent 46 different institutions across 24 states or US territories, as well as 5 countries. We are just over 65% MD, 27% DO, and 7% IMG, which is International Medical Graduate. Our current cohort is 47% women, and 69% of our current cohort does not have home neurosurgery programs. So we are really proud to be able to bring these people in and help give them resources so that they can match into neurosurgery or neurology or their specialty of choice, and really guide them through the research process for all types of neuro-related research. We have several faculty that are involved in NERV as well. I already mentioned Dr. D'Amico at Lenox Hill. And we also have faculty from Duke and Cornell that are heavily involved in NERV, and Brain and Spine Group as a whole. And by affiliation, NERV gets funding support from the Mayfield Education Research Foundation and the Integra Foundation. So that has really allowed us to build a lot of the technological infrastructure that supports our students as they go through the process of learning how to do research and conducting research. I just wanted to show this map so you can kind of visualize how diverse our NERV cohort is for the upcoming year. We originally started kind of in the Midwest, and so you can see that a lot of people are from the Midwest or the East Coast, but we're spreading out more and more. We have several students coming to us from schools in Puerto Rico this year as well, which is great. And we're kind of getting some more traction on the West Coast, as you can see, so we're excited about that. Membership requirements for NERV. So we do require that students are enrolled in a US MD or DO program and are interested in one of the specialties that we cover. Originally, we kind of started being focused on neurosurgery, and we still very much are, but we also welcome people who are interested in neurology and psychiatry. We welcome IMGs that are already located in the US, which is why we have a few IMGs this year. And these are some really talented individuals that are often already working in research roles at other institutions. So we're very excited to have those people. Our members complete an online research methods course at the beginning of the year that kind of teaches you everything you need to know about the research process, from formulating a research question to collecting the data, to analyzing the data, the stats knowledge you might need, to how to actually write a paper and get it published. So we cover all kinds of things in that research methods course. And then from there, the cohort meets twice a month for professional development and clinical knowledge sessions, which I'll show some examples of what that looks like in a minute, throughout the year. And every member participates on one of Brain and Spine Group's research teams. Each member is also required to lead at least one project of their own. So when people apply for the cohort, they submit a research proposal, and the senior NERV leaders and our faculty mentors help guide them through the process of actually conducting and completing that project. So each person is sort of the lead on their own project and then participates in one or two other projects from the other members in the cohort. So we really encourage collaboration as much as possible. Okay, as far as our research teams, we have 3 different research teams that all sort of have a different focus. Our Radwanski-Panulo team is led by Dr. Susan Panulo, who is a neurosurgeon at Cornell, and Dr. Ryan Radwanski, who is actually the founder of Brain and Spine Group, our parent organization. And their group focuses on a lot of neuroeducation, educational methodology, neurotrauma, and general neurosurgery topics. And then, of course, we have Dr. D'Amico's team. I'm sure you guys have heard some of the research that he's engaged with already. And we very much kind of stay in a similar vein, focusing on neurosurgical oncology, technologies like augmented reality in the operating room, and other things like AI. We last year did a paper kind of talking about ChatGPT and large language models. So that's Dr. D'Amico's group. And lastly, we have Dr. Alvin Ukachukwu, who is at Duke University, and he is in charge of their global neurosurgery department. So a lot of his projects or projects on his team have to do with neurosurgery and public health, or global neurosurgery, looking at neurosurgery in other countries, and kind of how neurosurgeons can get involved with public health. We are actively working to also establish teams in cerebrovascular surgery and functional neurosurgery. And we have one of our former members actually decided to go the orthopedic surgery route. And so he created an organization very similar to NERV. And we're collaborating with them on kind of spine projects. So we're trying to cover all of our bases in terms of the different subspecialties of neurosurgery that are represented. And we also connect people with individual faculty as needed for their projects, because we do have people that are interested in neurology or psychiatry topics as well. I will let Nick take it over from there.
Hey everyone, I'll be talking about our schedule and some other things. So for the upcoming year, this is what it looks like. And as Nikki alluded to, we have different meetings that span a wide range of topics, but they're strategically placed throughout the year to help students progress. So all new incoming students will take the research course to bring them up to speed and help them better conceptualize their projects. A new exciting development this year is we will be bringing back our in-person training camp in September. I think it's going to be in Cincinnati. We also have different workshops on how to help students prepare their ERAS, CVs, and personal statements. And I think on the next slide, it shows we have sub-Is and different types of meetings to help prepare students to go on interview rotations, so they can successfully do that. And towards the end of the year, we have all of our students that match come back and tell us how they did it, and how their experience was on sub-Is, and that is always really helpful and plays into kind of the shared objective mentorship that we stress. And this is kind of how we organize our projects. So we have a lot of different members, and we like to create a virtual town square where everyone can see the current ongoing projects, where they're at in their progression, and where people need help. So we use different type of applications like Slack and the Brain and Spine Group website to do this. For example, we have different tabs on there where if somebody needs help with stats on their project, they can reach out in the stats help tab, and usually a lot of members are eager to help out. So it is very easy to get involved with a lot of different projects. And this is a list of some of the ones we've worked on over the past year. As you can see, they span a wide range of topics, and they're not limited to any one type of research. We really are open to anything as long as it's in the neuroscience or psychology realm. And this is actually a paper that was published on Nerve last year, looking at shared objective mentorship. It's a systematic review of the literature. And one of the findings was that Nerve really is one of the only groups in the neurosurgery realm that stresses this. At the time this was published, 90% of our students were first-generation med students, and about 82% attended schools without a home program. And that's all we have for y'all. You can find us on X, Instagram, and Facebook, and also on the Brain and Spine Group website. That is also where you'll find the deadlines for applications each year. In the right-hand corner is the contact information for Nikki and I, and we'll open it up to any questions.
Yeah, Braintrons, if y'all want to go ahead and put your questions in the chat, we will answer those questions.
And Nick and I are also happy to answer any questions about med school applications or, the degrees that we've done in the past and present. So feel free to ask really anything.
So someone asked how you guys manage to balance research and med school.
You want to take that one, Nikki?
Yeah. Well, I won't lie, it's definitely difficult. Honestly, it's taken me years, and I was kind of grateful that I actually did an MPH before med school for that reason. Because and I'm finishing up my PhD now. So some of that extra time that I've had has really helped me learn how to manage my time better when it comes to research and how to be as efficient as possible. And I think Nerve in particular does a really good job with when we teach people about research methods, kind of teaching them how to be efficient. So that helps a lot. And I think it's also about learning how to prioritize, and probably most importantly, learning how to say no, which I still have a difficult time with to this day, because when you get involved in the organizations like this, like Dr. D'Amico is a genius, and he always has ideas, and he's emailing us or texting us with ideas for research. And Nick and I can't do it all. So we have to bring in, obviously we have this whole nerve cohort, but make sure we're bringing in other people as much as possible and delegating tasks, and saying no when you aren't going to be able to complete a project, and hopefully getting other students involved that can help with it.
Amazing, thank you. Someone asked, is the Nerve Research Initiative open to high school students? And if not, if you've considered expanding to high school students?
Currently, we're only open to students that are already enrolled in medical school, or in the case of IMGs, they've already graduated from medical school in their home country. I certainly would love to open it up more to pre-meds and even high school students. I think, Brain Turns is an incredible resource for people that are pre-med or high school level. But I think that eventually, if we had the resources for that, that would be incredible. And I think it's really important to give people at those levels opportunities for research and get people started as early as possible.
Great, thank you. Someone asked what role you feel research has played in your learning.
Nick, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. Well, in med school, depending on where you go, there really is little exposure to neurosurgery, even unless you have a clinical rotation in it. And so for me, by doing research specifically in it and seeing the different projects, the different concepts, it's really given me a good understanding of the field. And I think for me that has been the biggest thing, is it has been my window into this small field.
Great, thank you. We have a question asking how you guys get ideas for research.
I'll just for me personally, it's reading the current literature out there, and all the newest papers that come out will on certain hot topics. So a good example right now is AI and artificial intelligence, and you may have had some talks on it already. That's a hot topic in neurosurgery. So reading papers like that and new ones, you can go on PubMed and look at the most recently published. And usually those topics are good to target, and will be what people are focusing on in the field.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. I mean, some of our projects come from people with more experience, like our faculty mentors that have firsthand experience with what's going on in the field in the operating room, and then they can bring ideas to us. But a lot of times it is our students, for the most part, coming up with proposals on their own based on what they've read in the literature. And a lot of times when you read papers, typically the conclusion of the paper will kind of discuss what needs to be done in the future directions for that particular path of research. And that's a really good place within a paper to get ideas for what needs to be further explored. And then also when you're in med school on rotations, really pay attention to what you're attending, regardless of whether it's neurosurgery or any specialty, what they're saying in terms of, is there a consensus on a particular treatment for patients in the field? And if there's not, those are often areas where more research is needed.
Great, thank you guys. We have a question asking what your day layout usually consists of, if it's a steady schedule every day or if it differs.
Well, I think for Nikki and I, it's different. For me, I completed an additional degree alongside med school while I was in it, and did research with different institutions. So I completed the degree after I did my clinical rotations. So I would be in the lab, I would make time to study, and I do research in my spare time. But you really try to make time for it with what you have in med school, and in preclinical, there might not be as much time, but once you get into the clinical part of med school, it opens up a lot more in third and fourth year.
Yeah, I would echo that. As far as med school is concerned, I'm finishing up the PhD component of my program over the next few months, and then transitioning back into my last year of med school. So for me, at least during my PhD, it's long hours, but they're flexible hours. So I can kind of choose when I am doing my experiments. And so that's how I'm able to do research, clinical research and nerve and brain and spine group type things kind of built in around that. And I also try to take advantage of the time in the lab that's kind of downtime. If I'm waiting for something to incubate or whatever, I'm able to take that time to work on these things. But every day, as far as day to day, honestly, every day is very different. It kind of depends. And same thing when you're in med school, whether it's preclinical is a bit more structured, but when you're on your clinical rotations, you might be expected to show up at the same time every day, but if you're going into the operating room, the cases that you'll be seeing are going to be very different day to day, and or you might be in clinic. So I think a lot of people that go into medicine in general, and particularly neurosurgery, like to not necessarily be doing the same thing every day and kind of have that excitement in their schedule. So I think that's definitely true for me, even in the PhD part of my program.
Absolutely great. Thank you guys. We have a question asking if you would recommend doing both an MD and a PhD.
I think my advice for really anything you do in life is don't do it unless you really love it. So I will say that about a PhD. Med school is very, very structured. You kind of understand what you're supposed to do day to day, even though it might be different. You have a schedule. Even when you're studying for board exams, a lot of times you have made a schedule for yourself that's very specific. Doing a PhD is not like that at all. It's incredibly independent. You make your own schedule, and some people thrive with that and some people struggle with that a little bit. I've had a little bit of both. So I would say the PhD is worth it if you really love whatever you're going to do your PhD in. In my case, it was neuroscience and specifically traumatic brain injury, and that world and working with animal models genuinely does interest me. So that would be my advice, is the PhD is not necessary to match into neurosurgery if that is your goal. You can do it with just an MD or DO degree. So don't do a PhD just because you think it's going to help you match into neurosurgery. Do a PhD because you actually love the science that you're doing, whether that's bench science or computational science or whatever it is that you're doing. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Someone asked what your opinions are on wet lab versus clinical research.
I like both personally. It uses a very different part of your brain, I think, because wet lab is by nature very hands-on, and you have to be very resilient in the face of failure because your experiments will fail over and over again until they go right one day. So that's just a very different experience than the clinical research, which is often more at a computer and you're collecting data and things like that. But I think both require a large degree of creativity and intellectual curiosity to kind of come up with the research questions and figure out the best way to answer them. And a lot of writing skills as well, a lot of writing and communication skills. Nick, what do you think as far as the clinical research?
Well, I do, in terms of the timeline of med school, it seems long. 4 years is a long time, but your first year, you're really just getting used to studying, and then your second year, you get into the flow of it, and then by third year, it's almost wrapping up. So it seems long, but it's not a tremendous amount of time to get a bunch out. And as you all know, publications are important. So really being cognizant of what types of projects you get involved with. So I don't have wet lab experience, but I have other lab experience, and those projects can sometimes take a long time, and you can work on them for years, and they won't get published by the time you apply for residency. Whereas some of the more clinical projects you can get done in a couple months or longer. So I think, my message with that is be cognizant of the timelines, and when you're choosing projects, people can, like Nikki alluded, you can say yes to everything. That's your tendency when you come into med school and first get involved, but really pay attention to what the timelines are so you can get it done and have it on your application and be able to talk about it.
Great, thanks guys. Someone asked if either of you happen to know the success rate of DOs who are in NERV that are matched.
I don't know overall numbers. Well, last year we had 6 people total, and a couple of those were DO students that matched into neurosurgery. Since the organization has been around, we've had a total of 14 matches, mostly in neurosurgery, a couple in neurology. What I will say that I noticed this past year, mostly honestly through Twitter or X, because that's med Twitter is a good place to go to kind of get a pulse on what's happening in the medical field or specifically neurosurgery. And I was very excited to see how many DOs match into neurosurgery or other equally competitive specialties like ortho or vascular surgery. I'm sure there are others that are very competitive, but so I think the success rate is definitely increasing, and I think a lot of programs are becoming a lot friendlier towards DOs, which is, has been a long time coming. Nick here. Would love your 2 cents as well.
Yeah, it's definitely increasing and excited to see our members who are DOs match. There's different barriers for IMGs, DOs, and MDs, and we all have our own. I think I went to a DO school, and so for me, I didn't have a home program or know any neurosurgeons in my vicinity, so there was a lot of reaching out to do. But I think that's the biggest barrier for entry as a DO is finding the connections. And then once you do that, you could start working with them and be on an equal playing field. But that's one of the things that NERV has really helped me with personally is I've met a lot of attendings and residents that I otherwise would have never had access to. And so, yeah.
Amazing. Thanks, guys. We're going to have several questions about the international aspect of NERV, asking if it's open to international students or international medical students from Europe, from Brazil, and from India, the specifics that we've gotten so far. But if you guys just want to talk about the international aspect a little bit more, that would be great.
We currently, due to resources, are only accept people that are residing in the US. So we have some people that have graduated from abroad that are currently in the US that we've accepted into the program. It's not for lack of wanting to be able to accept those people. We just, our research productivity and our ability to mentor in research is often dependent on how many faculty we have involved, and we want to keep that quality of mentorship there. But I would recommend there is an organization called Global Neurosurgical Alliance. If you are an international student, to look into them if you're kind of interested in getting involved in neurosurgery or doing neurosurgical research, because they do a lot of great work more in the international space.
Great, thank you. Someone asked, this is a question for Nick, what your experience in DO school was like.
It's not all that much different from MD school. I have a lot of friends and a cousin my age and in MD school that I went through concurrently with. You do have a little bit different coursework. So you take all your regular med school classes, and then you do have some of the DO training with OMT, but all in all, it's pretty much the same. I guess one of the major differences is you can decide whether you want to take your USMLE. You're only required to take your COMLEX exams to get your license. And so some students choose to do that, but generally, if you're going for a specialty, it is best to take both. So, but overall, it's not been that much different. I would say the only thing is many of the DO schools stress primary care, and so, like I mentioned before, there isn't as much access to the specialties, and at many of the schools, you can't walk down the hall and be in a neurosurgery department. So you do have to do a lot more reaching out earlier on. But many MD schools do not have home neurosurgery programs either. So just kind of depends on the location you're at.
Thank you so much. This question comes from an IMG asking if it would be better to do lab research or clinical research in terms of matching into a neurosurgery residency.
Honestly, I think you could do either. Nick, I would love your take on this too. As Nick mentioned, clinical research can be easier to get done. And so if you're talking about a numbers game, like a number of publications, and that's kind of the metric that you are interested in, you'll get more publications faster with clinical research. That doesn't mean that it's not worth pursuing wet lab research. So I've seen IMGs that have done both, but I would say it leans a bit more towards clinical research. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I would say it leans more towards clinical, but there's no one size fits all with neurosurgery, and there's many more elements that go into matching just aside from research. You really do want meaningful research that you can talk about. It really isn't just about numbers. When it comes time to interview, they will ask you about your projects, and if you can't talk about them, that can be a red flag. But so definitely meaningful projects that can either be in a lab or clinical. and ensure you can talk about all of them. I mean, other elements, one of the most important parts of matching is your connections and your time on sub-internship. The sub-internship is where a department gets a month to see if they like you, if you work with others, and students have matched with fewer publications and lower board scores just by crushing their sub-internship and vice versa. So yeah, there really is no one formula. It's pursue what you're interested in. And if you do that and you do it meaningfully well, people will see that and that'll be good for you.
Yeah, and one other thing to add is what Nick was saying about, the sub-internships and your experiences with people being so important. You can have the best board score in the world and you can have 75 publications, but if you are not a good person to work with, you're not going to match. So, it's very easy when you're applying to med school or applying to residency to get caught up in all these metrics. But the most important thing is being a good person at the end of the day. I know it sounds cliche, but it's actually true. So keep that in mind.
Thank you both so much. We have a bunch of people asking what topics you would suggest to high school students for research.
Yeah, Nick, do you have a?
Yeah, I mean, it really, whatever interests you. I definitely think certain parts of neurosurgery are harder to understand than others. For me personally, I started my research in the spine because I thought it was the simplest. The anatomy is a little less complex than in the skull. And so I worked my way up from there. So I really just found a topic that I understood well, and I learned about that, and then it kind of goes hand in hand with the others, and I could branch out. But I'd really just start with an element you understand well, whatever that is.
And I would say, if you have any, doesn't have to be an institution you attend, and your participation can even be virtual. So if you start looking up, if you're specifically interested in neurosurgery, you could potentially look up faculty that are at nearby institutions or even further away if you're able to do things virtually, and kind of see what kind of research they do and learn more about it. And then I think that a really good way for high school students to get involved is to join a lab. And I don't mean just a wet lab. It could be a lab that focuses on clinical research, that has people at various levels above you. So has college students in it, has med students in it, because those are going to be the people that are going to do the one-on-one work to kind of guide you through the process, because a lot of neurosurgeons are not necessarily going to have the time to sit down with you and help guide you through the process. So that would be my advice, is to, regardless of what topic you're interested in, try to look for opportunities that have mentorship.
Great, thank you. Kind of going off of that, someone asked how you reach out to people for research opportunities, and also specifically while starting this program.
Initially, I usually, but before I had many connections, it was a lot of cold emailing. Different departments. Like I said, I didn't have a home program, so I would typically find the clinical research coordinator in association with a residency and reach out to them. There are many neurosurgeons out there, but not all of them are involved in research. So really targeting those ones that are usually in the periphery of a residency is a good place to start. And then once you start making connections, it definitely gets easier, and knowing residents and things like that. I don't know, Nikki, do you have anything to add with that?
Yeah, I would say don't underestimate the power of a cold email. When I was a freshman in college, I ended up shadowing a pathologist for all 4 years of college, and that came entirely from a cold email. And helped me get into med school, and my experience with neurosurgery has been similar. I did some wet lab experience prior to my PhD. That was a large part of the reason why I did a PhD. And that was also a cold email. So don't be afraid to ask, but also don't be afraid to get rejected or get ignored, because that's part of the game as well. Unfortunately, these people are very busy. So don't get discouraged if you don't get a response or you're not able to join the first opportunity you asked about. Just try to keep going and keep looking for more opportunities.
Yeah, and one thing to add to that, we actually have a meeting in our upcoming year. I believe it's using social media for networking. Nowadays, more than ever, the cold email is not your only option to reach out to places if you don't have access. So, X, Instagram, others, a lot of these residents and attendings will respond to you if you reach out to them. And typically, if I do it in that manner, I'll do an initial reach out and I'll ask for their email for a more formal one. But that is always a good option too.
Great, thank you. Someone asked how you decided between an MD PhD versus an MD with a research focus.
For me, so my school is a little bit different, and that's something to keep in mind with MD PhD programs. Is some of them are what's called MSTP, which is Medical Scientist Training Program. Those typically get funding from the NIH for their programs, and usually when you apply for those, it's the same time you're applying for med school, so you kind of know when you get accepted to med school that you're also doing a PhD from the beginning. Other schools they offer MD PhDs, but they may not be NIH funded MSTPs, which means their structure can vary quite a bit. My school doesn't really take people straight out of the med school application process. We do 2, or in my case, I did 3 years of med school, and then apply to sort of transfer into the dual degree program at that point, and then go from there. So the structure can vary a lot. The number of years that you're in the PhD portion can vary a lot from institution to institution. So that is something to consider. But for me, it really amounted to wanting to really dive into the bench skills, the animal model skills that I had kind of started developing prior, that made me lean towards doing a PhD instead of a research year, because I really wanted to get more in depth with it. And for me personally, in my career, I want to possibly have my own lab, and that requires getting funding, and doing a PhD is you can certainly have a lab without having a PhD, absolutely. But a PhD is a good opportunity to get more training with grant writing, experimental design, the things that are really going to help you get set up with your own lab down the road. So if that's something that interests you, you may want to lean more towards the PhD route. If it's more about just wanting to participate in research and learn about how to do research and continue to do that throughout your career, but maybe you aren't as interested in the bench research, or you may not be interested in having your own lab, then I think a research year would probably be the better option. What do you think, Nick, about the research year part of it?
I took a little different route. I did a master's while doing clinical research. Master's degrees people do. Some of the common ones are MPHs, MBAs, and others. And it really is what you make of it. I think if you do a PhD, it's a lot. I think it's more structured than some of the clinical work. A lot of there's not too many structured clinical research years for neurosurgery, so it's a lot of reaching out to programs and seeing if they have current projects you can work on. So it is what you make of it, but all in all, I think the most important thing, if you're going to do a research year with maybe an additional degree, is really having the connections before you go into it, so you can plan it out well. So yeah.
Amazing, thank you guys. Someone asked if you would share the timeline slide again.
Are we talking about this schedule or?
Yeah.
Of the various events. So yes,
Okay.
thank you. And someone also asked what the name of the ortho research group is.
That is called REAM, REAM Ortho. I can check really quick what their social media handle is. I think it's just REAM Ortho, but I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. Do you know off the top of your head, Nick?
Let me check here.
Oh yeah, it is Ream, REAM_ortho on Instagram. I'm not sure about X, but it's probably the same handle. So you can find them there if you're interested in orthopedics. Nitin Gupta is one of our former members, and he's now one of the founders of Ream. So we're sad to see him not apply to neurosurgery because we wanted him in neurosurgery as a colleague, but now we'll have him in orthopedic surgery as a colleague. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely check them out.
Thank you so much. This is a question for Nick asking what master's degree you did.
I did a master's of public health and MPH, so that's a very common one. The reason I chose it is it has a research component that trains you in how to understand stats, do stats, and there's a master's thesis where you can publish a paper at the end. So it kind of went hand in hand with the current research I was doing. But again, there's many different ones. People will do MBAs and still successfully match while doing research years. It's really what you want out of them.
Great, thank you. Someone asked if you both mentor high school students, and if not, how they should go about finding a mentor.
I have this summer we only have undergrads in the lab, but in the past, like my program has a program for local high school students to come in and do lab research for several summers in a row. So I've mentored high school students through that. So I would look for if there are any programs near you that do something similar to that, that get high school students involved in the sciences or in medicine. Just look for local outreach programs. And kind of like we were talking about earlier, don't be afraid to take advantage of Instagram or X or email to try to get in touch with people in your local community that are doing things that you may be interested in. There are, institutional limitations to things like shadowing in the OR, but a lot of neurosurgeons will be open to you doing that as long as their institution is okay with it.
Yeah, and for me, I am always open to offering advice if people want to reach out to me. But I really do think it is important to find some type of interest group that has some type of formal structure in terms of mentorship. And really, it takes a village to mentor a student and get them all the way into residency. So having as many contacts as possible, whether it's med students, residents, attendings, is a really good thing. But trying to find some type of group, I think, would be really helpful.
Great, thank you guys. Someone asked how your experience was doing an MPH. They said it's something they've been considering as a high school student, and they were wondering about career options from there if you don't go to medical school.
I can only talk on the career options if you do go to medical school. But I do know there are many people that get an MPH and work in the hospital system, in the tech sector, and in a variety of different ones. There are also different tracks with an MPH. So my particular one was with a focus on biostats that went hand in hand with my research. And I know there's a couple others, but I don't know. Maybe Nikki can speak a little more to that.
Yeah, I also did an MPH before med school. So there were a few people that were doing it while they were in med school, but a lot of them didn't necessarily go on to do med school. It was kind of like their terminal degree. A lot of people ended up working at a local public health department. We had an option for an emphasis in epidemiology. So some of those people kind of tracking, incidence and prevalence of certain diseases in the local community. There are certain diseases or like infectious diseases that are reportable. So the local public health department is responsible for tracking those and following up on them. For example, cases of food poisoning, this happened to me last fall. The local public health department will sometimes get in contact with patients that have experienced these things to kind of figure out if there's been an outbreak. I'm sure you've all kind of saw how important public health is with the COVID-19 pandemic, and when there are novel viruses or evolving situations, that's other opportunities where people with an MPH may be involved in tracking diseases or helping respond to diseases. So there's lots of opportunities in public health. There's also community health outreach, health education. There's so many different things that you can do with an MPH. And I really loved my MPH program, and I would encourage anybody who's interested to look into that more, because it's a really great opportunity with lots of career possibilities beyond that.
Great, thank you guys. We are just having a few questions asking a little bit more about what the application process to NERV is like. So if you guys could speak a little bit more on that, that would be great.
So we open applications now. It's been kind of like late spring, early summer each year. And the application involves just kind of, some basic questions about why you want to be involved in NERV. And then it's just submission of your CV or resume and a research proposal, which we give some guidance around what a research proposal should look like. So don't worry if you're unfamiliar with the sort of structure of a research proposal. We give some resources for that in our application, and our leadership team evaluates that and then offers interviews to people from there. And we conduct short interviews with people, just kind of trying to get an idea of their research interests and what they're hoping to get out of NERV. And then we, build our cohort from there. So it's not too extensive of an application process, but we do want to make sure that everybody that we bring into NERV is as passionate as we are about the mentorship and collaboration aspect of things, because that's really important to us to maintain that culture.
Amazing, thank you. I actually think that is the end of our questions. We do have a little bit more time if anyone wants to throw a few more into the chat. But in the meantime, if you guys have any advice for our brain turns or any parting words for them, I'm sure they would be very appreciative to hear anything else that you guys might have to say.
Yeah, I think it's really the brain interns program is really wonderful, because neurosurgery, it's a very long road, and expressing early interest in it is really important. Residency is 7 years, as you know, and people do additional fellowships after that. And if you add med school and undergrad into that, that can be 20 years of people's lives almost. So expressing early interest, really knowing if this is what you want to do is amazing. And so I encourage you to continue with brain interns, and when you get into med school, apply to NERV and do all the things we said. And that'll help you discern if it's right for you. Because when you get on clinical rotations, you only have about a month in each specialty to determine if you like it. And that's really not a lot of time to see if that's what you want to do with the rest of your life. So this early interest is really important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything Nick said. As I said towards the beginning of the questions, like, don't do things because you feel like you have to. Do it because you can't imagine doing anything else. I think it's a very long road. It's a very hard road. It won't be just you making the sacrifices. It'll be all the friends and family and mentors that helped you along the way as well. And so it's just important to make sure that the passion is really there, because that's what's going to keep you going when things get tough, and they will, and they do. But at the end of the day, this is an incredible field. There are just really incredible people in neurosurgery. Dr. D'Amico has really helped NERV get on the map, and I'm so grateful for that. So you'll meet the best people in this field and in medicine in general, and it's a wild ride, but it's a good one.
So we actually do have another question that popped in asking what undergraduate program would be best to prepare them for graduate studies in neuroscience.
Really, again, I hate to be, beating a dead horse with this do what you're passionate about thing, but there's a lot of different options. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and we actually didn't have a neuroscience degree. The closest thing we had was biopsychology. So that's what I ended up doing. But I know a lot of people that, applied to med school or applied to PhD programs in neuroscience that didn't necessarily pursue that in undergrad. So if you are passionate about something else and that ends up being your major, as long as you've done sort of the prerequisite courses for whatever program you're applying to, it doesn't really matter that much what your degree is at the end of the day. It's more about the experience of going through those courses and whatever other lab work or internships or whatever you did in college that will prepare you for grad school and for time management and things like that. I don't think there's a specific degree that is necessarily best for that. I think it's more about what you're interested in. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, like with what we talked about with the residency, there's no one size fits all in terms of neurosurgery or any other career. I think really the most important thing is being able to tell your story, whatever that is, and be able to show a progression of interests and taking the right steps all the way from undergrad through med school. And so when you get to the end and you get to your interview, people can see that clear path and that you've taken those initiatives, and that you can articulate that well. So that is the most important thing.
Great. Okay. Thank you guys. I think that is all of our questions. So thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to our brain turns today and give them a little bit more information on this amazing program that you guys are a part of and help run. Brain turns, if we could say thank you to Nick and Nikki in the chat, that would be amazing. Welcome back, Hannah. So yeah, thank you guys so much.
Yes.
Yeah, if you, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Could you also, Nikki, restate the ortho group social media?
Yeah, it's Ream, REAM _ ortho, ORTHO. And you should be able to find them. But you can also reach out to me or Nick, whether through email or on X or whatever. And we can also, if you missed it, we can direct you to the right place. And also if you have questions about med school, MDs, PhDs, MPHs, anything, you can reach out to us as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick and Nikki. That concludes our webinars for day, what is this? Day 7? Yes, day 7 of Brain Turns. So I'll pull up my, oh, I'm sorry, I just dropped my phone. I'm gonna pull up the schedule and share my screen so we can just review what to expect tomorrow. Okay. All right. So we only have 3 more days left of the webinar. This is going to be our schedule tomorrow. We are starting off at 9:00 a.m. with Dr. Randy D'Amico. He's talking about advances in technology and neurosurgery. Then we have Dr. Jamie Ullman. Dr. Soraya Maltavala will be coming back tomorrow, along with Dr. Ronit Gilad. They'll be talking about women in neurosurgery. And then we'll have a presentation from our clinical research team here at Lenox Hill Hospital with Senior Director of Clinical Research, Tamika Wong, Senior Project Manager, Sana Bokyo, Clinical Research Coordinators, Faith Singh, Sarah Massimo, and our Clinical Research at ACP and Nurse Practitioner, Olivia Albers. So that's what you can expect for tomorrow. All of the webinars up until today's have been uploaded to the YouTube channel. I'll post that link in the bio. And if you guys have any other questions, now is the time to ask. Thank you so much for joining us for the Brain Turns webinar series. It's been a pleasure having you again this year for our 5th consecutive year. Let's see. Playlist. I'm gonna share this. All right, here's the link to the YouTube. Oh, Christy beat me to it. Thank you, Christy. You're a star. All right. Does anyone have any other questions? No? All right. I think we'll adjourn 6 minutes early.
Awesome.
right.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. And if Brain Turns, once again, if y'all can say thank you to Nick and Nikki. We really appreciate y'all joining us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Too.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.